Lana Rafaela Cindric is a content marketer and avid fan of the good old weird internet. Since the days of ICQ are nowhere near coming back, she spends her time working as a product marketing manager at Patchstack and co-owning a content marketing studio called Cherry Red Content. With over 10 years of experience in content marketing and copywriting, she helps businesses thrive in the area of EEAT content. If you were here a few minutes ago, you heard a little bit about what EEAT was from the folks at Yoast. So this talk draws parallels between the old school blog style content many of us have started with and goes across the SEO-polished journey to the current era of algorithm changes and the E experience, E expertise, A authority, and T trustworthiness to score. The talk is designed to be practical for a wide range of audience members. So if you're a novice to people who've spent decades in the ecosystem, this should provide some helpful takeaways that you'll be able to implement right away to improve your results, both for rankings and for conversions. Let me bring her on stage. Hello, Lana Rafaela. How are you?
Hi, doing good. And yeah, you pronounced it perfectly. So thank you for that.
I'm so good.
How are you?
I should have asked you. I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it's a good day. It's a great day today. We're having a lot of fun with lots of different topics. We get those interviews, as you saw in between. And yeah, this is me living my best life on a day like today when I get to be involved in a project like this. So thank you for being here. I was talking to somebody about your talk title just yesterday and saying that when I was in my MBA program in 2000, the year 2000, they had a brand new course called track called e-commerce. And that just meant the web back then. Like everything was e-commerce if it was on the web. That's what was our terminologies. And so part of that, I had to build a website with my team, and it was all HTML. Like there was no CMS at the time. Everything was HTML. You might have had Dreamweaver or something along those lines, but we had to use HTML, and we built a site that when I look back on, I cringe, right? Hopefully it's not indexed anywhere. I don't think you can find it on the Wayback Machine because it was in a folder on our school's website or school's network. But we did something that nobody else in the class did, is that we had an animated GIF on that site back then. And back in the early 2000s, I actually had flash pages that would appear before you actually got to the content. So yeah, so I was a part of the early weird internet. So I can't wait to hear the rest of your talk. I'm going to take myself out of the room and add your slides and let you have the floor. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Yeah, I think when we all look back at those days, it was very pure. Like we had all those angel firesides, the GIFs, the flash player, all of those things, which today, if you ask any designer, they're probably going to tell you to get out of their faces because it's impossible. It's so bad for UX and everything, but it was fun. It was fun. And I think that's also the reason why I titled this talk the way I did, because I'm endlessly nostalgic. And even though today we have all that polish, we have all the best practices in the world, we know how to structure content. But if you think back to those good old days, like that content had soul. So as a content marketer, my goal has always been to understand why it is that some things have soul in writing and why others don't. And that's kind of what I'm going to walk you all through today. If you have any questions, I know we'll have a Q&A, but feel free to drop it in the comments as well. I'm curious to see what you guys are most interested in. But without further ado, let's go down that rabbit hole. Let's actually go back to the Huffington Post days, to days of Kottke.org, to the days when the sites looked this way and we still love them. Because at that point, it was all very niche. Internet, as Michelle said, everything was e-commerce. It was only available to a specific segment of people. And so it wasn't so much the presentation that we focused on. It was more the opinions. If you remember the Huffington Post early days, they became popular for the journalistic style of content. They had columnists, they had opinions. And similarly, on the other side of the equation, we had blogs like this one on the right-hand side, which is where people put their opinions first. It wasn't just about objectively covering the topic. It was about inserting opinions. It was about starting discussions in the comment section. And it's something that we haven't been really able to replicate in the past, I'd say 10 years, when it all became so popular. So if back at that point, we didn't worry about crowded sidebars or shortening attention spans as we did today, then obviously something changed. And what was it? The crucial question is understanding what changed. Now, I'm about to share a really cringy meme, so don't hate me for it, please. But I'm going to say capitalism. And the reason I'm going to say that is we started blogging for business. Back in the day, we blogged for fun. As Michelle mentioned, her site, it was for school. Some other people had them for niche interests. If you got into the game at that point and you knew you wanted to use it for business, then you were already on top of it. You were already one step ahead. Once the marketing got involved, and as a marketer, I'm not afraid to say it, we had to structure things. Obviously, this wasn't, I'm not saying marketing is bad. I'm not saying capitalism is bad. But the truth is that so many sites started being launched that Google and other search engines, they simply had to create rules. So jokes aside, we actually had some big changes moving the needle. With so many sites being indexed, Google had to filter and find a way to emphasize the ones which truly mattered. So that's how we got updates like the thin content update, which massively deranked a whole bunch of sites. That's how we got the changes in the content that we produce. It wasn't anymore about giving your opinion. It was about giving information as soon as possible. And so that sheer volume, we necessarily had to create rules. And then since Google created rules, as marketers, as business owners, we're investing into that. We're giving our revenue into that, and we expect to get the returns. So we have to adhere to the best practices. You probably remember the days of keyword stuffing, things like that. All of that changed the way we perceived blogging. Instead of being a personal blog or a web blog, it turned into being a piece of content marketing collateral, something that we can share with our customers and something that we can use to attract them. Similarly, the comment sections, which were great places for discussing, and I've met a whole bunch of people that I'm still peers and friends and colleagues to this day with, it happened in the comment sections. Today, no longer a thing because of the spam. And finally, the cluttered sidebars, we had to get responsive design. We started using our phones to consume content. And so we couldn't go without that polish anymore. But along the lines, something was lost. And the reason we blog had changed, the way we blog had changed, and all of that would have been good and well if it weren't for the last 2 years, where it became pretty clear that, again, we will need to change the way we do things. I'm seeing headlines like this every day. You've probably seen them. Even if we put aside the SEO is dead stuff, which it's not. Don't worry, it's not going anywhere, as the previous talk explained. We're still seeing that people are changing the way they search. They're changing the way they use blogs. For example, the headline about people adding Reddit to their Google searches. The headline about the core updates. If you want to, let me know in the comments, like if your sites were hit by one of the core updates in the past year and a half. You probably have those experiences. A whole lot of my friends have also been affected by it. And people in general, the bigger issue is that people seem to have stopped reading blogs in 2024, in 2023 as well. It's not just the AI. We all panicked over the AI, but it wasn't just that. And the problem is we stopped delivering unique value through them, and it shows. So Google is changing the search engine results pages. People are flocking to Reddit. They're communicating more in groups on Slack, on Facebook. All of that is really a much bigger signal that the way we're doing content needs to change as well. So how do we do it? I will be drawing parallels between the weird internet and what we do today, but I find the best metaphor and the best guideline for how to do content in 2024 to be Google's EEAT score. As Michelle explained, it stands for experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. So if you remember the old school blogs, everyone was blogging about their personal experiences. No one tried to emulate Wikipedia. No one tried to give summarized definitions. Everyone was explaining what was happening to them. And so naturally and organically, you had this point where they were integrating their experiences and their unique expertise into content. Today, we're in a position where we have to do it on purpose. And so if you follow the EEAT score, it's a pretty good guideline for changing the way you think about content. So how do we actually do this the old school way? As I mentioned, the EEAT score, in case you haven't really heard about it yet, is a relatively new Google helpful content update. It's meant to try and prevent all this clutter from happening on the internet, and it's meant to filter out the most valuable content. Now, obviously, it's not without its faults. We all know this. But even if you don't look at it in a way that's pandering to search engines, you can also look at it in a way that it helps your content become more useful to the actual readers. Because at the end of the day, who doesn't want to read content with unique experiences? Who doesn't want to come to a blog post and realize that the author actually knows what they're talking about? All of these are universal guidelines that you can follow. And here's how to do it when comparing things side by side. So back in the day, we had opinions. And if you remember one thing from this talk, walk away with the word opinions. We used to have so many of them. And the best thing was we didn't sanitize them. There were no feedback committees, as I call them, which is when you write a piece of blog content and then it has to go through 3 or 5 layers of approval, from the CTO to the lawyers to the accounting team, probably. There was none of that. The content happened much faster, which allowed us to cover things in real time. It allowed us to actually be there at the right moment. And it allowed us to have a unique voice. If you've been reading the majority of B2B or even B2C blogs online these days, you've probably noticed that they all sound the same. It's a fear instilled in us, but as our director of marketing at Patchstack likes to say, if no one hates it, no one loves it. And back in the day, we weren't so afraid of being hated or being disagreed with. At the end of the day, you could always solve it in the comment section, but the point was that you will provoke a discussion, and that's what mattered. Similarly, we put that opinion and that perspective first. So it was pretty clear off the bat what you thought about that topic. And this leads me to how we can do it today. So the first thing I would recommend is pick a stance. You're covering the topic, but pick a stance. Pick whether you disagree with that topic, whether you agree with it, and then prepare arguments to defend it. So throughout the rest of the talk, I'll be showing some examples of what we do at Cherry Red Content, my agency, and Patchstack, where I work as a product marketing manager. And in this specific case, you can see that we've decided to take a pretty hard stance on CMSs and on marketing stacks. And this is what matters. A lot of people were going to disagree always with this article. It's not a popular opinion, which is good, because if you have an unpopular opinion, it's something you should write about. I'm not just saying it to get clicks on LinkedIn. I'm just saying it because it's a fresh idea. And fresh ideas, they spark something in people. They make people want to talk to you. And if you're anything like 90% of brands today, when you post content, it feels like you're just shouting in the wind. Obviously, traffic is coming in, but you don't feel those conversations being started. This is going to change that. So don't be afraid to pick a stance from the get-go, and then, essay style, find your arguments, and then content writing style, make them fun enough to read about. The second thing is you have to choose an actual voice for your content. Casual, professional, authoritative, those are cop-outs. If your voice doesn't sound like someone's actually talking to people, no one's going to read it. They will skim it, but they're not going to start a conversation and engage with that article. In these two examples, for example, the first one was for a sales enablement tool. The writer had a very brazen voice, bold, not afraid to stand out. And that's where I want to get you to. Don't be afraid to stand out. Don't be afraid to show what you think. Obviously, you don't have to swear in content, although for some brands it can work, but just find something that feels good. A good shortcut to that would be to get for example, if you're in a smaller company, get your CEO to write some note style posts, try to get a sense for their feel. Normally, this works very good for startups. Now, if you're in a bigger company, this becomes trickier, obviously, because you have to manufacture that voice. But try to get a sense of the way your support people talk, the way your salespeople talk, the way your technical people talk. It helps if you know them, if you spend a lot of time with them on Zoom. And then out of that, create the guidelines for what your brand should sound like. There's nothing worse than realize the brand is, that the people in the brand are friendly and funny, only to realize that the actual content has no similarities to what the people sound like. So keep that in mind. Similarly, the second example is from a client who is an advertising coach. This is where you can experiment more with direct response type of voice, salesy type of voice. But again, it works in some segments. So you have to know your audience as well. There's nothing wrong if you have a group of evangelists or fervent users who love your product. There's nothing wrong with running some things by them, even asking them to make edits, what would sound more natural to them. Try to think of it as a collaboration. And once you establish the foundations for your brand voice guidelines, it'll be much easier to replicate it at scale. Remember, this is something that we were organically good at back in the day. And today we're trying to replicate that. We're trying to manufacture it again, or at least kickstart something in us that's going to help make it the same way again, or even better. And then also B2B doesn't mean boring to boring. And this is a pet peeve of mine. I can't count all the times I've seen content that was so dry just because it spoke to legal professionals or accounting professionals. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. At the end of the day, even if you're talking to project managers, you're talking to someone who woke up at 6 a.m. this morning and they're already tired. They got 500 emails. Their Slack notifications are blowing up. They need to deal with a lot of stuff and they don't have nearly enough coffee. So think of the people you're talking to as real, actual people. Try to imagine their day-to-day. Try to imagine what's really annoying them this morning, what you can help with, or maybe you can't help with it, but still humanize them and talk to them. And this is the part that's really tricky in content marketing usually, because we're not at the forefront of these conversations. At Patchstack, for example, I often do customer support, and that's immensely helpful for writing copy, for creating marketing plans, because I get to talk to people. And if you're a writer, if you're a regular content marketer, you don't naturally have that chance, but fight for it. Even if you have one customer or user interview per quarter, it will give you many more insights than you could get just by thinking about it. Also, humor. God, please use humor. Like in this example, I don't know, role play, LARPing, spicing up love lives. It works, it works. It couldn't work for everyone, but it works for this client and their style. But this is what I'm trying to say. Use humor, because if you can make them laugh, you can make them do anything. You can make them listen to you a bit longer, which is truly the goal when you're writing content that, usually gets skimmed, and you don't want that to happen. You want to capture their attention and you want to keep it on yourself. Similarly, make facts and situations more tangible. To do that, use slice of life copy and anecdotes. So this is what I was mentioning. Imagine that busy project manager, or just use more verbose copy. In the first example, we see that someone who is a professional is being described as driven, as passionate. All of these human qualities that somehow, we forgot that they're actually good in the workplace, that they tell a lot about the person. So try to humanize situations and make them more tangible as much as possible. And then in the second example, we have a Patchstack example where we try to explain the security layers by using the cake layer model, the Swiss cheese model. So all of these things, these little metaphors can help people understand what it is that you're doing. Plus, it makes it fun. Again, it's so trivial to say that it makes it fun, but at the end of the day, you have to entertain people as well. You don't want them to walk away from your content feeling just meh. You want them to either love it, you want them to either have laughed at it, maybe they hate it, and that's fine. That's fine. You know, it's always good, but just provoke an emotional response. And then the second thing, where are your experiences? So this is an example of an old school blog, which spoke about data privacy, and it came from a writer who worked at specific companies like Napster. And then he, from his experience, wrote a bunch of advice to living in this new privacy era. I believe this was written sometime in 2005, 2006. I mean, look at how far we've come when it comes to privacy. But yeah, this is what we used to do. We used to reference experiences. And that's, again, something that we need to do more of. All these algorithm changes, all of these search behavior changes and consumer behavior changes, they're alerting to needing more content like this. Because even if you stop thinking about it as content, think of it as communication, as a way to transfer your experiences to other people. One thing that you could do is reference your company's experiences. For example, in the first image, we were talking about the responsibility for website maintenance at Patchstack. It's easier because we do have those experiences. We do know what we talk to people about. And in the second one, that's a client example from my agency, an accounting firm that actually allowed us to use some of the real life experiences to help readers connect. So we're referencing business owner issues, pain points, and how we solve them. So you want to prove that you have that experience, that expertise to truly speak to people, because otherwise you'll just get lost in the sea of voices. And the crucial question is, what if you don't have the first person experience? So I come from a content marketing background. In some cases, I was able to talk to my clients. In more cases than those, I was not. And so if you're in that position, if you're, for example, a freelancer, then what you need to do is you need to break the SME, subject matter expert barrier. So you need to become or get in touch with people who are subject matter experts, whose experience and expertise you will be able to borrow for the needs of your content. The first thing is you can connect with internal SMEs. So for example, that's your CEO, that's your CTO, that's your salespeople, your developers, everyone who has the knowledge you need to produce that content piece. For example, if I were to write an article about network layer security, I would call one of the developers at Patchstack and ask them for their feedback. Because these people, they already know how to filter out the unnecessary information that your audience doesn't care about and that they feel patronized by. And instead, they can give you the nuggets of value that you can use to position your content as more experienced than your competitor, who's probably just having a writer and no feedback layer from an internal SME. The second thing you can do is you can interview existing customers or external SMEs. So with interviewing customers, obviously that's always the best. If you can use their words to explain what you want to write about. If not, you can still get that expertise benefits by talking to external SMEs. For example, you can use Help a Reporter Out or some of the many services that connect you with experts if you need their feedback, which I'm saying you do need it. And it's always going to make your content much stronger and much more susceptible to generating conversions. And then there's also a very light touch method that we often use at my agency. It's Slack listening. So basically we join the company Slack and we tune in. We get a feel for what the internal subject matter experts are discussing, what the customers are struggling with. You know, there's always the channel where you're talking about what happened in a demo, what the objections were, what marketing is currently thinking, where the product is going to go. All of this knowledge, it gives you context. I know it can be a lot, but it gives you the context you need to truly sit down and produce a fantastic content piece that's gonna withstand the test of time and the test of updates. So today, the first thing you can do is you can get your hands dirty with research rabbit holes. So try to look into not so popular sources. Try to talk to people who have been on the front lines of what you're trying to write about. I've emphasized an example from Patchstack's AI/ML team member, EEAT, who frequently looks into different AI/ML models, creates articles about that. Now, if he weren't so talented at writing, but you still could have used his experience by sitting down with him, grabbing 15 minutes of his time and seeing what he's working about to give yourself ideas about what the people are interested in. And then before we skip to this one, I just wanted to say that there are always ways, but try not to skip them. Try not to go back to that SERP spinning because it never works. It's not functioning today. If you have a content piece that's strong that you can ground in actual insights, then it's going to become so much better for it. And then finally, building authority together. Back in the day, we had all those roundups and links in the sidebars. But today, what we can do is we can co-market and collaborate with our partners, peers, customers. For example, Patchstack partnered on our white paper on security this year with Sakuri. Nestor, who you probably heard talk 2 hours ago, he joined a panel with the Page Builder Summit. So look into your network, see what your partners need help with and how you can complement each other to share that knowledge. Try not to always get something in return. It's not necessary. You want to build your digital footprint and the opportunities are going to come later down the line. So for example, we partner at Patchstack with some communities like the admin bar. We post knowledge about vulnerabilities in groups. All of this is great for building your digital footprint, and that's crucial for the EEAT score and just in general, the shifting consumer behavior, that's crucial. Similarly, you're going to have to prove why people should trust you. While author boxes still work, it's good to have proprietary data. Like in these two examples, you want to use the data you have harnessed internally to show why you're worth listening to. In this day and age of shortening attention spans, you need to prove your worth. You need to be clear from the get-go why what you have to say matters. So try to get any form of data you have. If you don't, depending on your stage and the type of company, talk to your customers, feature their stories, talk about use cases, create playbooks. Anything that's actionable, anything that's driven is a way to win. Similarly, answer the boring, the unsexy questions that your competitors don't want to touch. Create practical tools. Try to think back to those niche blogs where everyone was just responding to what they were interested in. They were creating posts about their hobbies, their interests. And that's what we want to do again today. To do that, you need the expertise, but I've shown you how to hack that, so it should be good. And then at the end of the day, there's no more low commitment content. I think that's the main point I want to make with this is you can no longer perform half an hour of research and call it a day. You shouldn't expect it from your writers, from your strategists, from your people. You need to invest in content and not just money, because money in some cases is easy. What you need to invest in is time. So if you're investing all that time, then make the most of it. Make the most of it and talk to the people who can help you get experiences and expertise, emulate them, and create something that people are truly going to remember. It's worth it. It's high ROI, and you can always repurpose it and share it. So think about that. Think about what you can do to become more opinionated, more experience driven, and you should be good. You should honestly be good. That's the way forward, at least in my opinion. But obviously, that's it from my slide. So if you want to change my mind, I'm very much open to it.